I found out on a Thursday afternoon, with my own ears, that my boyfriend and my roommate had been conspiring to bleed me dry. Class let out early, and I got back to the dorm sooner than expected. My hand was on the doorknob when I heard Chloe Bennett's voice inside, pitched loud and careless on speakerphone. The voice crackling through the line belonged to Jake Turner, the guy I'd been dating for 7 months. "We've been raking it in lately," Chloe said. "Tonight, take Emma Harrison to the Regal Terrace for dinner. Fleece her good, a couple $1,000, at least. That'll cover our new phones." "I already worked it out with the manager," she went on. "He's giving us 20% cash back on the total bill. Jake, order the most expensive stuff. Don't hold back." I froze. The cold started in my feet and crawled upward, inch by inch, until my stomach clenched like a fist. Jake's voice came through the speaker, lazy and amused. "Yeah, she's been giving me the side eye lately. Last week, when I made her pay, she stared at me a little too long. So what? Tell her your mom's in the hospital again. Make up some emergency expense. She's a soft touch. She'll open her wallet." "True." Jake laughed. "Besides having money, what else is she good for?" Chloe laughed with him. Their twin voices squeezed through the crack in the door and burrowed into my eardrums. My grip on the doorknob tightened until my knuckles went white. Everything snapped into place. The dinners Jake kept arranging, every time promising "my treat, babe," and every time, when the check arrived, his face crumpling into some fresh catastrophe. His phone died, he forgot his wallet, payroll got delayed, his mother's medical bills had drained his account. It started with a couple $100s. Then it crept into the thousands. I'd thought he was just broke. I'd started slipping him extra cash for groceries, for rent. And Chloe, sweet, attentive Chloe, always popping up with restaurant recommendations right before I headed out, pressing foodie guides into my hands like little gifts. I'd been grateful. I'd thought she was looking out for me. They'd built the whole thing around me, a custom-designed trap, and I'd walked into it every single time. The rage surged, hot and blinding, and for a second I almost shoved the door open to tear into Chloe right then. But I stopped myself. If I confronted her now, she'd blush and stammer and say sorry, and by tonight she'd be on a video call with Jake, both of them laughing at how easy I was. If I called the police, what would I even say? I'd eaten the food. I'd handed over my card voluntarily. The cops would give me a sympathetic nod and a pamphlet on personal finance. Not enough. Not nearly enough. I let go of the doorknob and took 2 silent steps backward. My phone buzzed against my thigh. Jake's message, timed like a punchline. "Hey babe, you free tonight? I want to treat you to dinner at the Regal Terrace. Candlelight, just us, *. I stared at the word treat until my vision blurred at the edges. Then I drew a long breath, walked to the far end of the hallway, and called out, my voice bright and carrying, "That sounds amazing. It's been ages, let's do it tonight." I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Chloe's footsteps pattered to the door almost instantly. She pulled it open, her face arranged into a mask of eager sweetness. "Emma, you're back. Remember you asked about good places to eat? I put together a whole new guide, I'll send it to you right now." I looked at her face, this face I'd shared a room with for over a year, and for the first time I saw what lay underneath the smile, a thin, greedy hunger she couldn't quite suppress. How had I missed it? Or had I just never bothered to look? "Chloe," I said, and my voice came out so steady it surprised me. "You're always so good to me." "Oh, stop it," That's what friends are for. Then come with me tonight. Jake's treating. After all those restaurant guides you made, you deserve this one. She blinked and something flickered behind her eyes. Calculation, maybe, or a split-second adjustment, before the smile widened. You sure? I don't want to be a third wheel on your romantic evening. You won't be. I held her gaze. If it weren't for you, I'd never have discovered so many delicious meals. I let the last word land a fraction harder than the rest. She didn't catch it. She was already too busy spinning around to pick out her dress for the night. By 7 o'clock, Chloe emerged from her room looking like she was headed to a red carpet. A low-cut cocktail dress, 4-inch heels, makeup so thick it could have been armor. She was dressing to be the main event. And I, apparently, was supposed to be the wallet watching from the sidelines. We walked into the private dining room together. Jake was already there, seated at a table piled high with food. 10 king crabs stacked in a glossy red mountain dominated the center, at least $300 worth right there. Around them sprawled lobster, steamed grouper, Wagyu beef, dish after dish shimmering under the warm lights. The bill would hit at least $900, easy. All of it Jake's favorites. All of it food I couldn't eat. I'm allergic to shellfish. He knew. He'd ordered 10 crabs anyway. Babe. Jake stood up, his face breaking into that familiar grin I now recognized as a con man's opener. You made it. Oh, Chloe's here too. He caught himself, but too late. How do you know her name? I asked, my voice flat. I'm pretty sure I've never mentioned her to you. The air tightened. A muscle in Jake's jaw twitched. He hadn't expected me to catch that, not so fast, not so directly. For a second, his confident mask slipped, and underneath I saw a flash of something raw, panic, quickly swallowed. Chloe jumped in, smooth as butter. Emma, you forgot, we met at the calligraphy club ages ago. Just once. We barely know each other. Right, right. Jake forced a laugh, the sound too loud in the quiet room. His eyes flicked over my face, scanning for danger. Calligraphy club. I didn't give him time to scan any further. I need to use the restroom, I said, and turned and walked out. But I didn't go to the restroom. I slipped through an unmarked door at the end of the hall, a tiny observation room I'd booked that afternoon, tucked out of sight with a clear view of their booth through a mirrored panel. I sat down, pulled the small silver recorder from my bag, and pressed record. Then I stepped back into the hallway, crouched, and slid the device under the edge of the carpet just outside their booth, invisible, silent, and close enough to catch every whisper. Back in the observation room, I put in my earbuds. Jake's voice came through first, tight with nerves. Why the hell did you bring her? You think she's onto us? Emma. That space cadet. Please. Chloe's tone dripped contempt. Relax. She's the most clueless rich girl I've ever met. After dinner you'll send her to pay, and she'll do it, same as always. Jake exhaled, and the tension in his voice melted into something greasy. You're a genius. Hey, let me see your hand. Stop it. What if she comes back? The sound of Chloe yanking her hand away crackled through the feed, but then her voice softened, turned coy. Later. After she pays and leaves, we can have our own little celebration. I pulled the earbuds out. My fingers were trembling, but my mouth was curved into a shape that felt almost like a smile. It wasn't a smile. I was just learning that extreme fury and extreme calm can look exactly the same. My phone lit up. Jake, Texting, asterisk babe, you've been in the bathroom forever. We're starving out here, asterisk. I typed back, asterisk go ahead and eat. My stomach's upset. I need another half hour, asterisk. Send. Through the mirrored panel, I watched Jake read the message and flash Chloe a grin. Then they both picked up their chopsticks and dove in. They ate like animals, crab legs cracking, butter smearing, Chloe laughing with her mouth full and licking her fingers. At one point she leaned back and patted her belly, belching loudly. Jake, admit it, my restaurant pics are killer. Tonight we'll clear over $200 just in kickbacks. Keep pushing her, Jake said around a mouthful of steak. Max out her card tonight. We'll get the new phones by Friday. I sat in the dark, recording every word, every wet smack of their lips, every conspiratorial giggle. When they were almost done, Jake texted again, asterisk babe, you coming? We're nearly finished. If you don't hurry, there won't be anything left, asterisk. I typed, asterisk enjoy your meal. Don't worry about me, asterisk. Then I stood up, tucked my earbuds into my purse, and walked out, not toward their booth, but straight to the front desk. I could feel my heart beating in my throat, a wild, steady drumbeat of anticipation. This was the moment I had been constructing in my head all evening. Check for room A8, please. The hostess tapped her keyboard. That'll be $960, ma'am. I opened my phone to a photo I'd taken earlier, a separate receipt for the single dish I'd ordered from my observation room, a $40 plate of stir-fried vegetables. Time stamped. I'm paying for what I ate. $40. That's it. The hostess's smile froze. Ma'am, I don't understand. The rest of the party can cover their own dinner. My voice was calm, almost pleasant, but it left no room for argument. I scanned the payment before she could protest and turned toward the exit. Ma'am, wait. A manager's voice chased me across the lobby, his footsteps urgent on the marble. You can't just leave, the rest of the bill. I paused at the revolving door and glanced back over my shoulder. The manager was red-faced, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. I met his eyes and spoke clearly, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. I paid for my food. They can pay for theirs. If they refuse, I suggest you call the police. I'll be happy to provide a statement about how those two have been running a kickback scheme with your restaurant. I'm sure your corporate office would find the details fascinating. The manager's mouth opened and closed. Some of the color drained from his face. He knew. He'd probably been the one to approve the deal. I pushed through the revolving door and walked into the night, the cool air washing over my hot cheeks. My hands were shaking, but I felt a fierce, electric exhilaration, the kind of high that comes from finally saying no. Outside, an autumn chill bit through my blouse. A black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine humming. The passenger window slid down, and Liam Mitchell's face emerged from the shadows, sharp jaw, level brows, a face that looked like it had been cut with a scalpel. He was the head of legal at my father's company, and he'd helped me untangle a contract dispute a few weeks back with the precision of a surgeon. Miss Harrison. Get in. His voice was low, but it cut clean through the wind. I climbed into the passenger seat. The car's air conditioning hit me in a wave, and I shivered. A moment later, a suit jacket settled over my shoulders, carrying the clean scent of cedar and something faintly citrus. I told you 7:50, I said. And I arrived at 7:48. I believe that's called being on time. Punctuality is a virtue. I pulled the jacket tighter and leaned back. The leather seat was still cold through my thin blouse, but I didn't move. He didn't ask what had happened. He just eased the car out of the parking lot and into the stream of evening traffic. The Mercedes moved like a big cat padding through the dark. Then my phone erupted. Jake's calls came in a relentless cascade, his name pulsing on the screen like a migraine. I hit silent. The texts flooded in. "Babe, where are you? The waiter's here with the check. We need you. I thought you said this was your treat." And finally, a voice message from Chloe. I played it on speaker. Her voice was a jagged shriek, fraying at the edges with panic and rage. "Emma, what the hell is wrong with you? You just ditched us here. The manager is threatening to call the cops. Get back here and pay this bill right now, do you hear me?" The sound of her panic was so raw, so undiluted, that it was almost musical. I savored it for a second, the crack in her voice, the background noise of Jake arguing with the waiter. Then I typed a single sentence, attached a screenshot, sent it, and blocked both their numbers. Liam glanced at my screen, one eyebrow lifting a fraction of an inch. "What did you send?" I turned the phone toward him. The screenshot showed Jake's message from this afternoon. "I want to treat you to dinner at the Regal Terrace." Beneath it, my reply. **, you said you'd treat me. You never said you'd pay. Enjoy your meal, **. A low laugh escaped him, not the polite, professional kind, but something genuine that started at the corner of his mouth and reached his eyes. He flicked the turn signal and guided the car down a quiet, tree-lined avenue. "Ms. Harrison, you're more interesting than I gave you credit for." That doesn't sound like a compliment. It is. He glanced sideways, his gaze lingering on me just long enough to feel intentional. "Let me take you somewhere you can actually eat. Your father mentioned you had a dinner engagement tonight, but knowing you, I suspect you didn't touch a bite." He was right. My stomach was hollow, a dull ache I'd been ignoring. The 10 crabs, the lobster, the butter-drenched everything, it had all been my allergy minefield, and Jake's personal feast. He'd never once considered whether I could eat. Why would he? In his mind, my role wasn't to eat. It was to pay. We pulled up to a tiny restaurant tucked into an alley, no sign outside, just warm yellow light spilling through wooden lattice windows. Liam got out, came around, and opened my door. When he leaned down, the cedar scent drifted over me again, familiar now. The owner's a friend. Home-style cooking, no shellfish. "You'll be safe here." I looked at him. "You seem to know an awful lot, Mr. Mitchell." Occupational hazard. He reached over and adjusted the collar of his jacket where it had slipped off my shoulder, a small, almost absent gesture that felt deliberate all the same. I don't like going into a situation unprepared. Inside, the restaurant held only 3 tables, each covered with a blue floral cloth. The owner, a round-faced man wiping his hands on an apron, broke into a grin when he saw Liam. "Well, look who's back, and with company this time." "Just a few of your best dishes," Liam said, pulling out a chair for me. "No shellfish. Otherwise, surprise us." The owner disappeared into the kitchen, and soon the crackle of a hot wok drifted through the curtain, carrying the sharp, homey scent of garlic hitting oil. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, * Ms. Harrison, this is the manager at Regal Terrace. We've received your payment of $40. The remaining $920 is being negotiated between Mr. Turner and Ms. Bennett. Mr. Turner says his phone is dead. Could you provide a contact number for him? *. I nearly laughed out loud. His phone is dead. He'd used that excuse on me 3 times. The first time I believed him. The second time I let it slide. The third time he must have decided I'd believe it forever. I sent Jake's number to the manager, adding, * he makes about $1,700 a month. He can cover it. If he tries to skip out, call the police, I'll serve as a witness. And ask him why he and Ms. Bennett were discussing their 20% kickback arrangement earlier this evening. I have the recording, *. There was a long pause before the manager replied, a simple, * understood, Ms. Harrison. Thank you, *. I could imagine the scene, Jake's face going pale as the manager's tone shifted from polite request to cold, hard demand. I could imagine Chloe's mascara starting to run as she realized the scam was crumbling around her. The image sent a quiet, satisfying warmth through my chest. Then I switched my phone off and set it face down on the table. Liam pushed a glass of warm water toward me, his fingers resting on the rim for a beat. Ms. Harrison. Why didn't you just refuse him outright? Who? Jake Turner. He leaned back, watching me with a calm, assessing gaze. I looked into it. 7 months. He had you cover meal expenses totaling over $12,000. Add tonight's bill, and it's closer to 13. Did you only just figure it out, or? You're asking why I let it go on so long. I wrapped my hands around the warm glass. Because every time, his excuse was plausible on its own. His mother was sick. His paycheck was delayed. His rent was due. Each story was just sad enough to be true. It was only when you stacked them all together that the pattern emerged. And that's what you did tonight. Yes. I met his eyes. You've been thorough. More than you know. He paused, as if weighing whether to continue. Chloe Bennett and Jake Turner have known each other for 15 months. That's half a year longer than you've been with him. They met on a dating app. Their message history shows they started discussing how to extract money from you as early as last March. Last March. That was when I just moved into the dorm. Chloe had helped me make my bed. She'd given me a little potted succulent and said, Emma, we're going to be like family. I drew a slow breath and forced the tightness in my throat back down. You really did look into everything, didn't you? I told you, he said, lifting his teacup, his eyes steady over the rim. I don't like going in unprepared. Tonight was your countermove. If you need to follow up, all of this evidence will hold. The owner emerged with the first dish, a bowl of tomato and egg noodle soup, steam curling upward in soft ribbons. The broth was a deep, simmered red, the egg ribbons thin and tender, a scatter of scallions floating on top. Eat that first, while I finish the rest, the owner said, already vanishing back into the kitchen. I picked up my chopsticks. The first mouthful scalded my tongue, but the warmth slid down my throat and spread through my chest, my limbs, the frozen tips of my fingers. And then, without warning, my eyes stung. Not because of the $12,000. Not because of Jake. Not even because of Chloe. Because of the soup. Because someone had known I hadn't eaten. Someone had opened a car door for me, draped a jacket over my shoulders, ordered a table full of dishes I could actually taste. I lowered my head and ate until the bowl was empty. Liam didn't interrupt. He sat across from me, drinking his tea, glancing out the window now and then. The silence wasn't awkward, it was deliberate, a space he was holding open, as if to say, take as long as you need. When I set my chopsticks down, he finally spoke. If he asks to reconcile, will you? No. And if he comes looking for you? Mr. Mitchell. I wiped the corner of my mouth and looked at him. You didn't come tonight just to feed me soup, did you? He smiled, a real smile this time. The faint lines at the corners of his eyes deepened, and the polished, guarded professional facade cracked open just enough to let something human peek through. "Your father mentioned his daughter had run into some trouble," he said, folding his hands on the table. "He asked me to see if I could help." "So he sent you?" "No," he corrected me gently. "He asked me. Being sent is an assignment. Being asked," he paused, holding my gaze, "is a favor." From the kitchen came the sizzle of a wok, the owner humming a tuneless melody. I looked away and turned my phone back on. 3 notifications hit the screen at once. A bank alert, $920 received from Jake Turner. Note, paying you back, asterisk. A friend request from Jake, asterisk I paid it. Can we please talk, asterisk. And a screenshot someone had forwarded, Chloe's latest social media post. A carefully angled selfie, her eyes red-rimmed and glistening with staged tears. The caption read, asterisk it only takes one dinner to see someone's true colors. Some people act generous but turn out to be cheap as hell. Ladies, keep your eyes open, asterisk. I let out a short, dry laugh. The absurdity of it, she was the one playing victim after running a months-long scam, was almost impressive. Liam watched my expression, then reached over and took the phone from my hand. He glanced at the screen, handed it back, and said, in the same even tone you'd use to discuss the weather, "Tomorrow I'll have my assistant pull Chloe's time sheets." Why? She claimed over $400 in overtime meal reimbursements last month. He lifted his teacup again, and behind it, his gaze sharpened. Per company policy, fraudulent reimbursement is grounds for immediate termination. I stared at him. "She works for you." "As it happens," he said, setting the cup down with a soft clink, "she's an administrative assistant at our law firm." The owner came out with the second dish, sautéed seasonal greens, vibrant and glossy, slivers of golden garlic scattered across the plate. "Liam, don't just sit there talking," the owner scolded cheerfully. "Put some food on the lady's plate." Liam picked up his chopsticks, reached across the table, and laid a neat portion of greens in my bowl. "We weren't talking about much," he said. "Just helping Miss Harrison take out the trash." The phrase "take out the trash" rolled off his tongue as casually as if he were offering to refill my water. But I heard the weight underneath it. "You and my father," I said. "You're close." "Close enough." He chewed a piece of braised pork, unhurried. "Last year, he helped me out of a tricky situation." "What kind of situation?" "Not important." He set his chopsticks across the rim of his bowl and looked at me, and the professional distance in his eyes receded another degree. "What's important is something he told me afterward." "What did he say?" "He said his daughter had spent her whole life solving her own problems, never asking anyone for help." Liam's voice dropped, the way a cello's lower strings resonate in a quiet room. He said he regretted it. That he'd never taught you something you needed to know. My chopsticks hovered in midair. "What?" He held my gaze. "That some things you don't have to carry alone." The owner had stopped humming. Outside the lattice windows, the streetlights glowed orange, spilling across the tablecloth in long, warm bars. I looked down, picked up the greens he'd given me, and put them in my mouth. They were a little cold by then. But somehow, my stomach was warm. And it wasn't just the soup. I thought it was over. The money had been returned. The numbers were blocked. Chloe had posted her passive-aggressive little rant, and knowing her, she'd sulk for a couple of days and then find someone else to leech off. I underestimated one thing. When Chloe posted that self-pitying screed, she forgot to block my coworkers. Monday morning, I walked into the office and felt it instantly, the weight of a dozen quick glances, the sudden hush that fell over a conversation as I passed. The receptionist's eyes skittered away from mine. Two colleagues in the break room bent over a phone, saw me, and scattered like startled birds. I settled at my desk. Sarah Jenkins, the design director, appeared beside me with a cup of hot coffee. She lowered her voice. "Emma, have you checked the company group chat?" I opened it. An anonymous message sat there, forwarded and re-forwarded, with over 200 receipts trailing after it. It was a screenshot of Chloe's latest post, timestamped late Sunday night. The caption was venomous. Asterisk shared a room with this girl for a year and she stabbed me in the back. Looks like a class act, family business, luxury car, but she can't even cover a dinner bill. Dumps her roommate and boyfriend at the restaurant and runs. Some rich girl. More like a broke girl with a trust fund, asterisk. Beneath it, 3 photos, Chloe outside the restaurant, a tear perfectly positioned on her cheek, a selfie of me and Jake she must have taken without my knowledge months ago, and a zoomed-in image of the dinner receipt, the total circled in red, $960. Her comments underneath were worse, one after another. Asterisk not making this up. Real person, real story, asterisk. Asterisk her dad owns a company. Hundreds of employees. You tell me she can't afford one dinner, asterisk. Asterisk defamation. I dare her to sue me. I know where she lives, what she drives, where she went to school. I'm anonymous, babe. She can't touch me, asterisk. Nobody in the group chat said a word. But those gray indicators kept piling up, silent and staring. The weight of that silence was oppressive, 200 people watching, waiting to see if I would crack. I didn't crack. A cold stillness settled over me. This was the moment Chloe had chosen to double down, to bet everything on her narrative. And she had just handed me the perfect excuse to bury her. Sarah touched my arm. "Emma, we all know you're not like that. But there are hundreds of people in that chat. Maybe you should say something." "No. But it's already spreading." "Sarah." I looked up and gave her a small, calm smile. I said no. She blinked. In her memory, I was the easygoing one, the one who never raised her voice, the one who laughed off minor slights. She didn't recognize the person sitting at this desk now, face settled into something unnervingly still. She patted my shoulder and walked away. I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was not defend myself. It was document everything. Every post, every comment, every anonymous forward, I screenshot it, screen recorded it, backed it up to the cloud with timestamps. Then I plugged in my earbuds and pulled up the audio file from Thursday night. Chloe's voice filled my ears, bright and vicious. Asterisk we've been raking it in lately. Take Emma Harrison to the Regal Terrace and fleece her good, asterisk. The manager's giving us 20% cash back. Asterisk Jake, admit it, my restaurant picks are killer. Tonight we'll clear over $200 just in kickbacks, asterisk. I clipped 30 seconds of the most damning material, exported it to a USB drive, and labeled the file exhibit_A_audio_001. Then I picked up my phone and called my father. "Emma." His voice was warm, surprised. "This is a nice mid-morning surprise. That contract thing from last week. Dad, I need you to pull together the legal team. George Thompson and Liam Mitchell. Conference room 1, noon." A pause. I knew that pause. He was reading the weight of my words. What's going on? His tone had shifted. All business now. Nothing major. I stared at the sound wave patterns on my screen. Just need to borrow your legal department. I'm taking out the trash. At noon, I walked into the conference room. My father sat at the head of the table, George Thompson from legal on his left, Liam Mitchell on his right. All three of them looked up when I came in. I saw the concern in my father's eyes, the professional curiosity in George's, and something quieter in Liam's, a quiet, steady confidence, as if he already knew I was about to deliver a knockout. I plugged the USB into the main screen. 3 items appeared: the social media screenshots, the group chat logs, and the audio file. Listen to this first. I hit play. Chloe's voice and Jake's voice coiled through the room. George's expression shifted from confusion to shock, and from shock to a tight-jawed anger. He removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, as if the sheer ugliness of it was physically irritating. My father's hand closed around the armrest of his chair, knuckles going pale one by one. I could see him doing the math. His daughter, bled for 7 months, right under his nose, while he'd had no idea. His jaw tightened, and a vein pulsed at his temple. Only Liam remained unchanged. He leaned back, his long fingers resting lightly on the edge of the table, watching the screen with the quiet assurance of someone who'd already read the answers. When the recording ended, the room sat in silence for several seconds. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. George spoke first. Is this recording admissible? Yes, Liam said, before I could. The conversation took place in a common area of a public dining establishment. Ms. Harrison, as an involved party, had every right to document the interaction. Under the federal rules of evidence, a recording obtained in this manner, with a clear chain of custody, is fully admissible. The file is unedited. The timestamps are intact. No tampering. Correct, Ms. Harrison? Correct. Then we have solid ground. George flipped open his notepad, his pen already racing. We pursue a civil defamation suit, cease and desist, public retraction, restoration of reputation, plus emotional distress damages. We've won these before. With this evidence, the odds are excellent. It's more than defamation. Liam's voice cut in, steady and unhurried. From a civil standpoint, Bennett and Turner engaged in systematic fraud. They fabricated the pretense of a treat to induce Ms. Harrison into covering high-cost meals, while secretly collecting kickbacks from the restaurant. Total damages exceed $12,000. From an employment law perspective, Bennett submitted fraudulent reimbursement claims in excess of $400 during her tenure at our firm, gross misconduct, grounds for immediate dismissal with cause. George pushed his glasses up. And criminal. Liam rose, walked to the whiteboard, and picked up a marker. He wrote 3 words in a sharp, slashing hand: asterisk fraud. Embezzlement. Defamation, asterisk. Fraud requires proof of intent to permanently deprive the victim of property through deception. Our evidence chain includes the recorded conversation, the restaurant manager's testimony regarding the kickback arrangement, and 12 months of bank records showing a recurring pattern of Ms. Harrison being induced to pay. Motive, method, result, closed loop. He drew an arrow connecting the evidence points. Embezzlement applies to Bennett's falsified reimbursement claims. The amount is small, but the legal classification is clean, useful as leverage. Defamation requires demonstrable harm. Bennett's statements have been forwarded within the company group chat to over 200 employees. The threshold for reputational damage has been easily met. He turned to face me, offering the marker. Miss Harrison, how do you want to proceed? Everyone looked at me. My father's eyes held a mix of anger and guilt. George looked ready to file a dozen motions before dinner. Liam was simply waiting. I stood, walked to the board, and took the marker from his hand. But I didn't write anything. The silence stretched, and I let them wonder if I was going to demand blood. We're not filing a lawsuit. What? George's eyebrows shot up. My father leaned forward, surprised. No lawsuit. One cease and desist letter. That's all. Liam leaned back against the whiteboard, arms folded, one eyebrow slightly raised. He didn't ask why. He was waiting. Chloe Bennet isn't some criminal mastermind, I said. She's just greedy and stupid. Greedy enough to think everyone owes her something. Stupid enough to think no one will ever catch on. I set the marker down and looked at the legal terms Liam had scrawled across the board, the ink still glistening. Letting her understand what she's about to face, that's more effective than actually making her face it. A lawsuit gives her a fight. A fight gives her a story. A story gives her sympathy. I'm not giving her any of that. I'm giving her a mirror, and making her look at exactly who she is. George still looked uncertain. And if she doesn't back down? She will. I turned to my father. Because as of today, she's going to understand the difference between us. She has to scheme and manipulate to get what she wants. I can choose to let it go, or I can choose to make her pay. That choice, that power, that's the difference between someone who has nothing and someone who has everything. The room went quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Then Liam laughed, not the polite, professional chuckle, but something genuine that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He tilted his head, studying me like I was an elegantly constructed legal argument. Miss Harrison, he said, that's more devastating than any lawsuit I could have drafted. My father looked at Liam, then at me. The concern in his face slowly shifted into something more complicated, something that looked almost like pride, an expression he hadn't quite practiced enough to wear comfortably. He cleared his throat. All right. He pushed back his chair and stood. George, do it Emma's way. The letter goes to Chloe Bennet by close of business today. Make it sharp. Make it undeniable. Understood. Liam, my father added, you'll assist Emma with any follow-up over the next few days. Liam nodded. It won't be a burden. The way he said it, his gaze resting on me, suggested he meant something else entirely. I gathered my files and walked out. In the hallway, my phone buzzed, a friend request from a burner account, Chloe's handiwork. The message read, *Emma, I deleted the post. Please don't be mad. We're still friends, right? The audacity of it, after everything, she still thought she could slide back in with a smile and a half-baked apology. I deleted the request without replying and turned off my phone. Liam was waiting at the elevator, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He handed me one, black, no sugar. He'd remembered. Heading to the firm, he asked. Yes. I'll join you. The elevator doors closed. In the mirrored walls, our reflections stood side by side. I sipped the coffee, bitterness spreading across my tongue and then, oddly, a faint sweetness lingering at the back of my throat. That speech you gave in the conference room, Liam said. Did you mean it? Which part? Choosing not to retaliate takes more strength than choosing revenge. In my experience, most people with power choose revenge. The floor numbers tick down. 6. 5. 4. So you want to know why I'm not retaliating? Yes. 3, 2, 1. Because the real revenge isn't making her feel pain, I said. It's making her realize, I paused, the coffee cup warm against my lip, that she isn't even worth the effort of retaliation. That she is so small, so insignificant, that I can erase her with a single letter and then forget she ever existed. The elevator dinged. The door slid open. I stepped out into the lobby, where the autumn sun poured through a glass dome overhead, pooling on the marble floor. Behind me, Liam's voice came low and clear, "Emma." I turned. He stood in the elevator doorway, half in sunlight, half in shadow, his gray suit catching the light. His mouth curved, and in his eyes was something restrained, measured, but unmistakable. "You're the kind of person," he said, "that people should either never cross, or never let go." My heartbeat stumbled. But my face gave nothing away. I turned and walked toward the front doors, my pace steady. "Mr. Mitchell," I said over my shoulder, "we have an afternoon of work ahead of us." "Coming." His footsteps fell into rhythm with mine. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, the cease and desist letter landed on Chloe's desk. I didn't witness it myself, but I had my sources in the administrative department. The account reached me, word for word, before the hour was out. George Thompson had walked into the admin office with 2 paralegals. He didn't rush. He moved with the slow, deliberate gravity of a judge approaching the bench. The room, which had been buzzing with the usual afternoon chatter, fell silent. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Chloe was at her desk, painting her nails, a peacock blue shimmer, one pinky held delicately aloft as she admired her work. A bag of snacks lay open beside her keyboard, next to a fashion magazine. She looked up at the sudden silence, and her smile froze when she saw the 3 dark-suited figures approaching. George placed the letter on her desk. The paper was thick, cream-colored, the law firm's letterhead embossed in heavy black ink. "Ms. Bennett, on behalf of Ms. Emma Harrison, I am formally notifying you." She picked it up with her pinky still extended, careful not to smudge the polish. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, and her pinky dropped. By the end of the first page, the color had drained completely from her face, leaving her makeup garish against the pallor of her skin. She's suing me." Her voice came out thin, reedy. "She's actually suing me." The nail polish bottle wobbled and tipped over, a vivid blue stain blooming across her desk like a bruise, seeping into the open magazine and pooling around her keyboard. "At present, this is only a legal notice," George said, his voice calm and implacable. "However, if you fail to comply, we are prepared to pursue all available remedies, including litigation for fraud, embezzlement, and defamation. The evidence we have compiled is extensive. Additionally," he paused, letting the word hang in the air, "your employer has initiated an internal audit of your expense reports, beginning tomorrow. Please cooperate fully." The word embezzlement hit her like a slap. Her mouth opened and closed. Around her, co-workers were staring openly now, some with shock, some with a kind of grim satisfaction. Chloe had never been well liked. Her charm was the kind that only worked on people who didn't know her. Chloe's hand started to shake. Not the dramatic, performative kind, the genuine, uncontrollable tremor of someone watching the ground split open beneath them. She grabbed her phone and called me. Blocked. She tried texting. Blocked. She borrowed a coworker's phone, then another, then another. I'd set my phone to reject unknown numbers. Each time a call failed, her panic visibly escalated, her movements becoming jerky and desperate. Finally, she ran out into the hallway and begged the cleaning lady for her ancient flip phone. The call came through from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, knowing exactly who it would be. Emma Harrison. Her voice was a scratch on glass, ragged and hysterical. Are you serious right now? Over one dinner. I posted one stupid thing. I didn't even name you. You named my father's company, my car, my school. My voice stayed level, almost pleasant. I was standing by my office window, watching the afternoon light slant across the buildings, and I felt a deep, serene calm. You said, I'm anonymous, she can't touch me. Well, here I am. Full name, full address, official letterhead. I'm not anonymous, Chloe. Silence. Her breathing was harsh and wet, like someone struggling to keep her head above water. I could hear it, the sound of a person drowning in the consequences of her own actions. What do you want? The words came out strangled. 3 things. I counted them off on my fingers, even though she couldn't see me. 1. Delete every post, every comment, every single trace of what you wrote, and issue a public apology on all your social media accounts and in the company group chat. Full admission that you fabricated the story. I'll approve the wording. Not a single word goes out without my say-so. 2. Repay your share of the money you and Jake scammed out of me. Based on the kickback split and your involvement, your portion comes to about $6,300. 1 week. You can sell those phones you were so eager to buy. 6,000. Are you insane? Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? Her voice cracked, rising to a near wail. 3. I continued, ignoring her outburst. You resign. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I heard her teeth click together, a sharp, involuntary sound. You can't. Why should I resign? Her voice had dropped to a whisper, but the defiance was still there, a last flicker of resistance. Because you don't deserve the job. I walked to the window and looked down at the evening traffic, the red river of taillights winding through the city. You're an administrative assistant. The core function of administration is trust. And what have you done with it? Fraudulent expense reports, illegal kickbacks from vendors, and a coordinated scheme to defraud a client. You've turned a position built on trust into a con. You are a liability, Chloe. A walking, talking breach of fiduciary duty. And if you don't resign, I will make sure you are fired, with cause, and the reason will follow you to every job you apply for the rest of your life. I let the pause stretch, let her imagination do the work. You don't belong anywhere that requires trust, Chloe. She started to cry. A wet, snuffling noise that held more rage than remorse. You're so cruel, Emma. I was good to you. I made you those guides, I found you those restaurants. Her voice was thick with self-pity, trying to claw back some moral high ground. You made those guides so I'd spend more money, so you and Jake could collect bigger kickbacks. My voice didn't waver. It was almost gentle, and that gentleness was the cruelest thing of all. You weren't good to me. You were good to my wallet. There's a difference. You've probably never understood it, but there it is. She went quiet. For a long time, there was nothing but the sound of her ragged breathing and, somewhere in the distance, a car horn. I could picture her, standing in some back hallway, mascara streaking down her cheeks, the cheap flip phone pressed to her ear, alone. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. It was low, sly, sliding toward a threat. A last, desperate gambit. That recording, how did you get it? You taped me secretly, didn't you? I checked. Secret recordings are inadmissible. I smiled. She checked. Of course she had. She knew exactly how dirty her own hands were. Chloe, go look up section 1035 of the Civil Code regarding the protection of a person's voice. Then read the Supreme Court's guidelines on the admissibility of unedited audio recordings in civil proceedings. I let each word land slowly, deliberately, like nails being hammered into a coffin. Also, you're sitting in a law firm right now. You are surrounded by lawyers. Knock on any door and ask them whether that recording can be used as evidence. Go ahead. I'll wait. The silence on the other end became absolute. I could hear the faint, distant hum of the city through her receiver. And in that silence, I knew she understood. She had no cards left to play. Then, in a voice so small it was nearly a whisper, I understand. She hung up. I lowered the phone. My fingers were trembling, not with fear, but with the release of something that had been coiled inside me for 7 months. Every time I'd handed over my credit card, every night I'd lain awake with a nagging sense that something was off and talked myself out of it, all of it finally found an exit. Outside, the sky had darkened. The city lights were flickering on, one by one, like someone pressing stars into a deep blue canvas. My phone lit up. A message from Liam. Asterisk, the firm's HR inbox just received a resignation letter. Signed by Chloe Bennett. Effective immediately, asterisk. Attached was a scanned image, a single sheet of paper, the words personal reasons scrawled unevenly across the lines. The paper was creased at the edges. There were spots where the ink had bled, as though something wet had fallen on the page and been hastily wiped away. I imagined her writing it with a shaking hand, the fight finally gone out of her. A second message followed. Asterisk also, a company-wide notification just went out, Chloe's public apology. Want to see it? Asterisk. I typed, send it. The screenshot appeared. Her apology was long, carefully phrased, admitting she'd fabricated the story, acknowledging the false statement spread across social media and the group chat, expressing regret to Ms. Emma Harrison, and requesting that others refrain from further sharing the misinformation. She ended with, I have learned a hard lesson and have already paid a significant price. I read it twice. Nowhere in those paragraphs did the words I'm sorry appear. That was fine. I didn't need her apology. What I needed was for her to vanish from my world entirely. And she had. Liam's third message followed, asterisk, mission accomplished. Does your attorney have the privilege of buying you dinner tonight? Asterisk. I typed back, what are we having? Asterisk, the usual. The owner says you didn't get enough of his braised pork last time. He's been simmering a fresh batch all afternoon. He says if you don't come, I'm not allowed back either, asterisk. I smiled at the screen. I'll be there in half an hour. I grabbed my bag and headed out. Passing the front desk, Sarah flagged me down, her eyes bright with the thrill of fresh gossip. Emma. The group chat is exploding. Chloe Bennett actually posted a public apology, a real one, admitting she made it all up. And she quit. Just packed her stuff and left, her eyes all red and puffy. What did you do? I just reminded her of the difference between us, I said, smiling. Sarah studied my face for a moment, perhaps expecting more of a reaction. Then she laughed, shook her head, and waved me on. You're terrifying, you know that. So I've been told. Outside, the autumn night air wrapped around me like a cool silk scarf. The wind carried the faint, honeyed scent of osmanthus blossoms, so delicate I had to breathe deep to catch it. The black Mercedes was waiting in its usual spot, headlights cutting two clean beams through the dark. Liam leaned against the driver's door, sleeves rolled to his elbows, holding a paper bag printed with the restaurant's logo. When he saw me, he lifted it slightly, and the smell of slow braised pork drifted into the night. "Miss Harrison." Steam curled from the top of the bag. "Pork belly. The owner says it's been simmering since noon, meltingly tender. I figured you might want something warm." I took the bag. Through the paper, the heat seeped into my palms and climbed through my wrists, my arms, settling somewhere near my ribcage. "Has anyone ever told you you're annoying, Mr. Mitchell?" "Many people." He pulled the passenger door open. "But you haven't yet." He closed the door, circled the hood, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine murmured to life, and we pulled into the slow current of evening traffic. Streetlights slid past in steady rhythm, illuminating his profile and pulses, the sharp line of his nose, the firm set of his jaw, and then shadow, and then light again. "Emma," he said. "Yes." "Your father called me before I left the office." "What did he say?" "He said," Liam paused, turning the wheel just enough to ease the car into a quieter street. "He said to look out for you. But not because you're his daughter." I watched his profile. The next streetlight swept over his face, catching the bridge of his nose, the slight curve at the corner of his mouth. "Then why?" "Because," he said, glancing at me in the half-dark, his gaze landing with the gentleness of something weightless, "you're worth looking out for. You always have been. He just didn't know how to tell you." The car fell quiet. Outside, the lights kept coming, bright, dark, bright, dark. After a long moment, as we pulled up to the restaurant, I heard my own voice rise into the stillness. "Liam. The pork's going to get cold." He blinked, and then a laugh broke out of him, not a chuckle, not a polite exhale, but a real laugh, low and surprised and tinged with something that sounded a lot like surrender. He shook his head and reached for his seatbelt. "Emma Harrison," he said, "you are impossible to chase. But I'm not giving up." I didn't answer. I opened the bag, picked up a piece of pork, and put it in my mouth. It was still hot. And outside, the autumn night stretched on, full of lights and silence and the promise of something new.